Hello everyone, my name is Marcus Yoa. I'm a cybersecurity engineer, and my primary goal is to help organizations or people protect their cloud or on-premise workloads or resources. Today, I'm going to be talking about virtual firewalls on Azure and how to use them to protect your cloud resources. Now, a common question I usually get is my network security group not sufficient enough to protect my cloud workloads? And my answer is no. The NSG works at layer 3, and you cannot use a layer 3 security service to protect applications that run at layer 7. On the screen is a test IS server. My goal today is to use a Sophos virtual appliance to protect this IS service from the internet. First things first, I'm going to log into this test IS server to confirm reachability. The public IP address of the test server is here. I'm going to copy it and paste it here. Now let's test connection to this IS server. You can clearly see I'm able to reach this test server via RDP from the internet. Next, I'm going to enable the IS service to simulate a web application access from the internet. Now I'm going to test if I can reach IIS on this local host. Fantastic. The next thing I'm going to do is try to see if I can reach IIS on this public IP address from the internet. Now that we have IIS access to the test server, the next question is this not sufficient enough? And the answer is absolutely not. The reason is this. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. This is a port 80, and we all know this is not secure. That being said, you have also allowed yourself access to the IIS service without protection to the top 10 OAPS vulnerabilities. Next question is, how do we fix it? We can leverage on using a virtual firewall appliance on Azure to provide that web application firewall service. How do we go about doing this? The test firewall I'm going to be using today is a Sophos firewall on Azure. And to get to that, I would type in the Sophos firewall, and that should be presented to me in the screen. I go there and I hit on create. Now to tell us to pick the subscription, I'm using the Azure subscription 1. Now resources. Now bear in mind, when you're deploying the Sophos firewall in Azure, you can only attach it to a group that doesn't have an existing object in it. Here I'm going to pick the MarkBytes firewall group. The region, I'm going to leave it in East US. The VM name, I'm going to call it the Sophos Firewall VM. For the password, I'm also going to give it my password. And I'm going to hit on next. For the license, you can either use BYOL, which is bring your own license, or pay as you go. In this case, I'm going to use bring your own license. I'm going to leave the virtual machine size as the standard F2 V2. For the virtual network, I'm going to be creating a new virtual network. The LAN, I'm going to leave everything as default. I'm also going to be creating a new public IP address. For the domain name, I'm going to be calling it Sophos Firewall VM01. For the storage, I'm going to create a new storage. Just everything going to be basic. Click OK and hit on next. So now I'm on the review and create page. I'm going to scroll down, confirm everything is perfect, and I'm going to hit the word create. And this should take a couple of minutes and everything should be deployed perfectly. You can always check your status here to see how things are progressing along. While this is being deployed, I'm going to go to sophos.com and register a new virtual appliance. Now you should get an email with the trial serial number. All right. You would need this to register the firewall. Please remember that. All right. Now I'm going to go to the firewall and I'm going to try to connect to the firewall using this public IP address. Connect to the firewall, you need to type https // the IP address and port 4444. We should be able to, fantastic, hit continue. I'm going to enter the username and the password. This password was set when we're configuring the firewall. Next, I'm going to enter the caption code. Good. Hit on accept. Now we have successfully logged into the Sophos Firewall. This is a fully functional deployed Sophos Firewall on Azure. Now the next thing is, how do we use this Sophos Firewall on Azure to protect our test IS server? As you know, currently we have two virtual networks, one for the test server, one for the Sophos Firewall. And right now, as we speak, the Sophos Firewall and the test server will not be able to talk to each other. This is a test server. I'm going to open command prompt and confirm the IP address. The IP address of this machine is 10.0.0.4. I'm also going to go on the Sophos Firewall to confirm the IP address. The IP address of this firewall is 172.160.4. I'm now going to attempt to ping the firewall from the test server. And surely this would fail. Let's talk about why. Now we have two very different virtual networks, and the goal here is to allow for communication between these two virtual networks. To do that, we can deploy what we call VNet peering on Azure. VNet peering allows for two different VNets to communicate with each other. Now let's navigate to Sophos Azure to get this done. Other virtual networks, I'm going to pick the one for the Sophos Firewall, which is the VNet. Under settings, I would see the option for peering. We have currently don't have any peerings. I'm going to click on add. Here I'm going to give it a name. Here I'm going to say allow test IS server to access VNet. I'm also going to make sure that I check on test IS server to receive forwarded traffic from VNet. I'm going to do the same for the other side. Also, I'm going to allow VNet to access the IS server, allow VNet to receive forwarded traffic from the test IS server as well. After this is done, I will click on add. This will create the virtual network peering between the two VNets. To test connectivity, I'm going to go back to the test IS server and try to see if I can ping the firewall. And there you go. We can ping the firewall, which the VNet peering is successful. Now, let's ensure that we are able to ping the test IS server from the firewall. In order to do this, I'm just going to be sure that we're turning off the Windows firewall on this machine. Please do not do this in a live environment. This is purely for test purposes. Now I'm going to go to the Sophos Firewall, copy of the public IP address, and then I'm going to open command prompt and try to SSH into it. And we have access to the firewall. Bear in mind that the only reason why this is possible is because on the NSG attached to the VNet, we have allowed port 4444 and port 22 inbound. Now I'm going to test ping connection to the IS server by pinging 10.0.0.4. Fantastic. And there you have it. We can ping between the Sophos firewall and the test IS server. But that's not all, because right now all traffic from the test server is going out through the public IP address of that machine. And that's not what we want, because this is leaving this test server heavily vulnerable. What we want is to route all traffic through the Sophos firewall. To do this, we're going to deploy what we call routing tables on Azure. Type and search for what? Route tables. Here, we're going to click on Create. The subscription, I'm going to leave it in Azure Subscription 1. The resource group, I'm going to attach it to the resource group of the test server. The region, I'm going to leave it in East US. The name, I'm going to call it the Sophos Firewall Route Table. I'm going to propagate gateway routes. Hit the next, hit the next, create. Now I have successfully created a routing table. I'm going to search for my route table and then hit click on it. Under settings, I'll go to routes. Now we currently have no routes. We're going to click on add routes. I'm going to give it a name, test server to firewall. Destination type, I'm going to pick IP addresses. Destination, I'm going to say all traffic. Next hop, I'm going to pick on the virtual appliance. The next hop address is going to be the IP address of the virtual appliance. And I'm going to hit add. This will create this route. Once this route is created, I'm now going to associate this routing table to a subnet. Okay? And by navigating to subnet and go to associate. I'm going to associate this to the test server virtual network. I'm going to hit on OK. This will automatically route all traffic going from the test server directly to the Sophos firewall. If we now navigate back to the connection, we can see that we have lost connection. This is because we're no longer able to access that server using its public IP address any longer. I will close this off at this point. So what do we do and how do we gain access to the server going forward? Very good question. To do this, we're now going to navigate to the Sophos firewall. On the Sophos firewall, we're going to create a couple of things. The first thing we're going to create is a physical route statement. The route statement on the firewall tells it that if you are going to 10.0.0.0 network, you should push it out through the port A. And this is going to be /16. This is the subnet range for the VNet for the test server. Gateway, I'm going to pick 172.16.0.1. Interface, I'm going to pick port A. For the gateway, I'm going to type in 172.16.0.1. How did I get this information? On Azure, always understand that the gateway is always going to point to 1. I'm going to now hit on save. This is now telling me that to be able to get to the 10.0.0.0 network, I need to push it out through the port A. Good. Number 1 step done. Second step, I'm going to navigate to networks. I want to still be able to use the same public IP address that I use in accessing IIS, but now I want to use it through the Sophos Firewall. How do I do that? I will navigate to Azure and go to my resources. I'm going to go to my public IP address. The public IP address I'm looking for is a public IP address that is attached to my test server. Now, what do I want to do here? I want to dissociate this public IP address from this test server. Reason being, I don't want this public IP address to be directly attached to this test server because I don't want people to access this test server directly. So I'm going to dissociate this IP address from the test server. Now that we have dissociated this public IP address from the test server, I'm going to now attach this public IP address to the firewall. Okay, but in order for us to do this, I'm going to navigate to the firewall. Navigate to IP configurations, and I'm going to hit on add. Here I'm going to pick the name, and I'm going to give it the name test IIS server public IP. I'm going to make sure it's turn it to static. And the private IP address I'm going to give it is 172.16.1.5. Now, this is important because I'm also going to be giving this information on the firewall directly as well. For the associated public IP address, I'm going to hit add, and then the public IP address is going to be the test IIS public IP address. And then here I'll click on add. This has successfully added another public IP address, which is the test IIS server IP, to a private IP address on the firewall. Next, I'm going to navigate to the Sophos firewall and make sure I have this configured as well. On the firewall, I'm going to navigate to Network, Add Interface, and hit on Add Alias. Here, I'm going to go to port B. Make sure you're picking port B and enter the IP address 172.16.1.5. Just the same IP address that you have allocated within Azure. Change this to a /32 and hit save. This will directly map the public IP address of the test IIS server to this local IP address, which is 172.16.1.5. Step number 2 complete. Step 3, we will log into Azure and go to the network security group for the virtual network attached to the Sophos firewall and make sure we're allowing port 80 inbound. To do that, we're going to navigate to Azure, and here we're going to type NSG, Network Security Group. We'll pick the one that's associated to the firewall, which is the security group. And for inbound rules, we're going to add port 80 inbound. To do that, we're going to go to inbound security rules, and we're going to hit on add. Here we're going to say any source port range is a wildcard, destination is any, for service is custom, destination port is 80. Protocol is TCP, allow, and I'm going to hit add. Now bear in mind, you can make the security policy as tight as possible by indicating the source and the destination. While this has been successfully configured, we're now going to navigate to Sophos Firewall to allow this traffic inbound direct to port 80, pushing it to the test IIS server. Here we will go to add firewall, create server access assistant, specify the private IP address. This is going to be the test IS server object. We can also type it here, hit on next. Specify the public IP address. Here we're going to pick the 172.16.1.5. Hit on next. Users can access the selected services on the internal network. I'm going to pick HTTP. Click next. Users can access the internet server from the selected services. I'm going to say from any location. Hit on next and come here and save. Now we're going to try to see if we can access this server again from outside the network. But this time it's going to be going through the Sophos firewall. And there you have it. You are able to reach the IIS server from outside the network through the Sophos firewall. And to confirm this, if we go to diagnostics, packet capture, you can see the traffic coming in and out through the Sophos firewall. Thank you so much for your time today. You can always leave a comment if you have any questions or reservations, and I'll be happy to reach out to you. Remember, everything I've done here was purely configured within a test environment. In a real-life production environment, you would be deploying this service using the web application firewall. Also, remember, running a web service on AT is highly disapproved. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'll see you next time.